Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. Today we'll continue our lab, the Red Alert Labs, the video number 104. This is 105 I think. We have been discussing, this is video number 105. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been working now for 16 videos in discussing the documentation which is called CIS Critical Security Controls version 8, which is provided by the organization which is called Center for Internet Security, which is an organization. Its main focus on securing different operating systems, different applications, and securing networks in general. Okay, so this organization has issued this documentation for protecting yourself against cybersecurity attacks. So the documentation is called CIS Critical Security Controls version 8. Its focus, or it discusses how you can protect yourself against cybersecurity attacks. We have working now for discussing this documentation for 16 videos. We have discussed from this documentation the first 7 points to secure yourself against cybersecurity attacks. In brief, the first point is to make an inventory of your enterprise assets hardware. The second point is to make inventory of your enterprise assets software. The third point is to data protect or data protection your data when it is in rest and when it is in transit. The fourth point is to establish, maintain, and secure your configuration of your different enterprise assets hardware and software. The fifth point is to do something called account management, to have a system to control your accounts, to delete them when they are idle, to monitor high privilege accounts. This is the fifth point. The sixth point is to control access or access control management, to monitor the rights assigned to accounts and do not give users excessive rights and give them rights only related to their job description. This is point number 6. Point number 7 we have been discussing in the previous video, which is called I think the 7th point was talking about let me see, I think the 7th point was talking about continuous let me go further, to manage vulnerability, or to have a system for managing vulnerabilities. You need to have a plan or a guide to scan for vulnerabilities in your network, to remedy the vulnerabilities in your network, to archive all of these results, so to archive the vulnerability scans, and to archive the vulnerability fixing or redemption of these vulnerabilities, and to have a plan to scan for vulnerabilities for a certain amount of time. So you need to scan for vulnerabilities every 3 months for your internal network or your internal servers, and for example to have vulnerability scan on your exposed or your externally exposed servers, scan vulnerabilities for every month, for example, and to have or to make this process through a well-known software, something like maybe Managed Engine Vulnerability Manager, or SolarWinds Vulnerability Manager, or I was working before with McAfee Vulnerability Management, which is now expired, it's not working. Anyway, you need to have a software to scan for vulnerabilities and to have a plan for scanning for vulnerabilities and to remedy these vulnerabilities, and to document these vulnerabilities and fixes for future reference. So this was the 6th, or this was the 7th point. The 8th point we will discuss today, something called audit logs. So logging is a very critical point in any organization. So logging is the solid evidence for any activity done in your network. So logging of Windows events is a solid evidence of what was happening within the Windows environment through different users or through different user accounts. So this is one of the things: logging on Windows servers, logging on Windows workstations, logging on firewalls, logging on switches, every device have a log, and these logs should be maintained, monitored, and saved to a centralized location. So you need to collect all of the logs of different devices, so you can save them, okay, for future reference, and to investigate them when there is an evidence, or investigate them when there is an incident that happens, maybe a hack incident on something, and to monitor high account or privilege high accounts, for example the local administrators, the domain admin. This is a way also to accountability, or to know who is accountable for doing something. If there was a problem, or we need to punish someone for doing something, we need to check the logs and see who have done this. So this is a way to monitor and control and control your environment through logging, and to rectify errors. So the logs also is a very important tool to solve problems, and to maybe there is a problem that happens, we need to check the logs to see, maybe there is an application error, so we need to check the logs to see if the logs contains anything that will help us solve this problem. But anyway, he is talking here in this point for audit logs. This is to log special events, okay? It's not all of the events, or something called audit logs. In general, the Windows logs a lot of things. So if you go to the event log, first of all, let me show you this point, something called audit log management. Let me open the PDF and show you what he mean by audit log. So if you go there and open the CIS controls, sorry, so if we open these controls, let me go to the audit log management, and let it be further here. So here, collect, alert, review, and retain audit logs of events that could help detect, understand, and recover from attack. So here is focusing on the logs that will help you detect an attack, or understand an attack, or recover from an attack. So he's here focusing on security logs. There is a lot of logs actually logged by different devices. So for example, Windows can log application logs, system logs, system logs, and security logs. So there is a lot of logs that is recorded by Windows. But audit logs is a special log you need to activate in Windows to monitor certain activities. So the audit logs is not activated by default. Okay, so you need to activate the audit logs through the group policy, and we'll show you all we have discussed before in securing Windows 10 and securing Windows Server, that the recommendations of the Department of Defense to secure Windows 10 and secure Windows Server to open audit logs in each of these operating systems, and special options should be activated through the group policy so the audit logs can work. I have discussed this before in securing Windows 10 and Windows Server, but in general I will show you all how you can activate audit, and audit is done to certain events. So audit logs are very important to detect, understand, and recover from an attack. This is very, very, very critical. So you need, for example, to audit accessing different files or different shares, to audit accessing different command prompts, or if someone is using the PowerShell, you need to check the commands that was issued in the PowerShell. Maybe a hacker is using the PowerShell for hacking, or auditing the command prompt. Also, maybe a hacker is using command prompt to issue an attack. So we need to audit or to log certain activities in the Windows, and he is concentrating on certain events. If you return to securing Windows 10 and securing Windows Server issued by the Department of Defense of the United States, we will know what events he is concentrating on. But let's first see what the Windows normally log. So this is audit logs. We need to activate it specially, and I'll show you all how we can activate it from the local group policy or through the Active Directory group policy. I have discussed this before, but this will be a short brief or a short reminder. So let's close this one and let's see first what the Windows logs. So here we can see this is the logs created by Windows, or this is the logs that is written by Windows. We have certain categories: applications, security, setup, system, forward events. Application, here he logs any application installed on Windows. It will be logged in this place. Security is related to logging different user account logs, different permissions, or different accessing to different file shares and files. So security is related to accounts and groups, or the activity of the accounts and groups within the Windows operating system. Okay, and these accounts and groups, maybe also it access some files and shares. So this is events related to the users and groups. Systems, it is related to the Windows 10 operating system or the Windows operating system events. So this are for applications installed on Windows, and this is the Windows operating system itself events. So these are the normal logs issued or created by Windows. So the security, which we are focusing on here, we can see it will log very important events. For example, a login of a user, a create of a user, a create of a group. So all of these are important data we need to see when a hack happens. Maybe, for example, a hacker has created a user, so you need to get to the security events and check the logs. These logs are not or does not provide enough data, so the Department of Defense of the United States recommended to open audit logs. So audit logs are additional logs that will be added, or additional events that will be added to the security events, that will provide more information about an attack, or to understand an attack, or detect an attack, or to monitor an attack. Okay, and we need these logs to be collected and to be, let me show you here, he's saying that these logs should be collected and saved and retained, or to be archived for a certain amount of time. So we need to audit certain events so we can know from it how the attacks or the cyber attacks have happened, and we need to archive these events for future analysis. Okay, so this is the default categories for the different events logged by Windows in normal process. So for example, here we can see that the security events contains a lot of data. Some of them are user accounts events, some of them are changing of permissions for users. So these data are all in one place. So we need to I have discussed before that we need, for example, to have only, not all of the events are listed here. We need, for example, only the user events or the login of users to be categorized in one category. So for example, we need the security events not to contain all of the data or display all of the data. We need it only to display user logs. Okay, so we can do this through custom views. I have done this before, but let me show you all in one video, or in the Red Alert Lab. I have created 8 custom views that will categorize or will make us view certain events. Let me show you all these events, or import it to see it. I have done this before, but let me show you all the Red Alert Lab, and let's go to the custom view logs. Okay, let me import it one by one. Open. Okay, so this is access to shared objects. This custom view will only log, or will only display logs concerning accessing to certain share folders or to certain files. So let me import all of them. So, number 2, I will discuss all of them one by one, but let me again log in this and import all of them. Video number 3, or the number 3. Okay, and then let's go again for number 4. Okay, and let's go for number 5. Okay, and then let's go for number 6. Okay, and then let's go for number 7, and then let's see this one. Okay, and let's go to number 8. Okay, number 8, and then go to number 9. Okay, so we can see here all of these events. So these are all events or security events accessing to shared objects. These are included in the security category. Account login and logoffs are included in the security category. Account management events, creating of users and groups, are included in the security event. Auditing, all of these audits categories will be also included in the security event, but after activating the audit option. Object accessing audit also is included in security event. Schedule, task logging, process tracking, all of these events are included within the security event, but we need to make it organized. So I don't need to see all of the 9 categories in one place. I will split them to categories. So for example, here I can see the account login and logoff events. Okay, I can see them separated from all of the events in the security. Okay, so I can see now audit login accounts if I need to see who logged in and logged off. And then for account management, I can see who created what groups. Okay, from here I can see for example who accessed some shared folders or files. So instead of seeing all of this in one place, I am splitting them to smaller categories. I can view them and focus on them more. Okay, so this is a good thing to do when you are having to check the event log for certain events, to make them categorized to smaller categories or to make custom views. This is much efficient to check the information you need instead of searching for it in different, or searching for the kind of event in a lot of other events. So here the security contains all of these 8 categories. So you need, for example, if you need to see login for a certain user, you need to check the security events for all of these and filter them. Okay, so here this is, consider this as a filter. So here security events are filtered to 9 filters. Every filter contains the information I need. So this is something good when you are auditing or when you are checking a certain hack process. You can check the event logs in a more organized way. So the first thing you need to do to create custom views in, for example, your Windows Server or Windows 10. These custom views will help you to check the event log efficiently. And also one thing to do, that all of the events should be collected in a centralized location. So all of the Windows 10 events and all of the Windows Server events and all of the firewall events, all of these are collected to a centralized location. So you should create a server and install an application on it, specialized software, and there is free software of this kind or done this job. So there is softwares to collect events or event logs from different devices. Some of them are free and some of them are paid, but you need to have a server and install a software that its mission or objective to collect logs from different devices, and then back up these events and monitor them and save them. Okay, save them and monitor them. So this is one thing to do in a professional environment. You need to have a server that its mission is to collect logs from different devices, so we can monitor them, save them, and check them if a hacking process happened. So what we need to do, first of all, we need to have a server that contains all of the logs or collect all of the logs from different devices, and then we can categorize these logs or filter them, okay, into categories we can easily identify and easily work with. Okay, so for example, security events contains a lot of info, so we need to categorize or filter them to categories. Login events are filtered, account events are filtered, so all of these things should be done. Okay, This is the first thing. So you need to get a server to collect all of the logs from different devices. This is the normal logs, okay? So this is our normal logs that doesn't provide much information. And after having this server installed, we need after that to activate the audit log on Windows 10 and Windows Server to create detailed events that will help us to track hacking processes. And these detailed event logs should be also collected by the system log server, okay, or the server that will be responsible for collecting logs, okay. So here he is saying that we need to monitor the logs, the normal logs of Windows, and to activate additional options that will record, or these options will let us record more detailed events that we need to use when a hacking process happened. So I have discussed before how we can activate some audit logs, or how we can activate the option of audit. You can simply activate the audit logs, or to activate audit from, let me show you all how we can get this. This is the local group policy. So if you need to activate audit for certain events on Windows Server or Windows 10, I have discussed this before when we were discussing securing Windows 10 and Windows Server according to the Department of Defense recommendations, Department of Defense of the United States. So let's see here, from this we can get to the security setting, and here we can see there is something called, let me open here, Advanced Audit Policy Options. Okay, if you open this System Audits, here we can see there is a lot of things we can log, okay. So we can audit privilege use of certain, here we can see there is a lot of things you can activate. So if you activate this option, then the events will be logged with more details we need. So the Department of Defense of the United States activated most of these audit options to have more detailed logs concerning activities on Windows 10 and Windows Server. So I encourage you all to see my videos concerning securing Windows 10 and Windows Server, especially the part talking about audit policies, okay. So you need to activate these logs, or these audit logs, to monitor certain or to monitor or to get more details about certain activities in the Windows, okay, Windows 10 or Windows Server. And I have discussed before in a previous lab called COVID-19 that there is some special utilities, free utilities, that you can use to audit certain activities on the Windows 10 and Windows Server. I will show you all at the end of the video. Where is this video in my COVID-19 series? I will show you this video, and please review it also to see that you can have special tools that you can use to review audit or to review certain events. These tools are for free, and it will provide you more details than the one provided by the Windows or the event viewer. So let's see what are the recommendations, or what they say, or what the CIS says about audit logs. Here is saying you need to establish and maintain an audit log management process. Establish and maintain an audit log management process that defines the enterprise logging requirements. At minimum, address the collection, review, and retention of audit logs for the enterprise assets. Review and update documentation annually, or when significant enterprise changes occur that could impact the safeguards. So you need to establish an audit management process. You need to, first of all, create a server, put an application on it that is responsible for collecting logs from different enterprise assets, and define which events you need to log, okay, the normal Windows log events, or you need to activate audit logs, and what audit logs you need to collect. So for example, you can define what activities you need to carefully audit and activate the audit option on it. So for example, if you need to monitor the USB plug in and plug out of certain devices, then you need to activate the audit option on removable devices. this will be activated using the group policy anyway, the GPO anyway. So you need to have an audit log management process. This process should be documented. As I said before, the practical steps for the audit management or the audit log management process is to create a server, put on it an application that will collect all of the logs from different devices and identify the events you need to log and identify the servers that you need to collect the data from. This is the practical steps. You need to document these steps. You have a documentation listing the software that you will use to collect logs, the server that will be installed on it, the events you need to log or the events you need to collect. Identify these events and list it in a PDF or in a documentation, and the retention, or how much you will keep these logs, where it will be saved, where it will be backupped. Okay, all of this should be documented. Okay, so you are not only make or creating the process or installing the server and putting the application on it to collect the logs. No, you need to document all of these things to have a clear documentation about something like this. So this is the audit log management process, the first thing. And then the second point is to collect audit logs. Collect audit log, ensure that logging per the enterprise audit log management process has been enabled across the enterprise assets. So the first step is to make the server that will collect the logs, install the application that will collect the logs, and then identify or activate the audit option on the Windows 10 or Windows Server. So you will not able to collect audit logs unless the audit option is activated on the devices like Windows 10 and Windows Server. And after activating these audit options, to which activities you need to identify this. You need, for example, need to audit file shares or a certain folder or a certain activity. Okay, so you need to activate the audit logs and then collect the logs through the application. Okay, and then ensure adequate log storage. So you need also to take into consideration the storage that these audit logs will be stored on. So you need to have enough space. And also the logs in general, you need to specify a size for the logs. So we have seen before that in Windows 10 we identify that the security logs will have a certain size. So for example, if the security logs will reach 20 megabyte, then this log should be backed up. Okay, and then the log will be cleared or it will be wiped out, and then you will begin recording new events. So this is something called the policy for the audit log size. So you need to, through also the group policy, let me show you all. This is also done from the local group policy, or this will be applied using the GPO or the Active Directory group policy. So from here, let me show you all something. Administrative templates. I think from the system, then you can see something called event. Let me see logs, or something called event logs. Let me see something called, let me see, it is something called not file system. I think maybe from the Windows. Let me see, from Windows components maybe. Yes, event log service. Okay, here you can see that, for example, this is the security log. Okay, you need here to control, this is the location of the log, so you can identify the location of the log, this maximum log size. So if the security log will reach a certain size, then you will tell him to do one of the three things. First, to back up the log when it reaches a maximum size, or to overwrite the logs when it reaches a maximum size, to overwrite, to delete the old events and record new events, or to leave this log as it is and open a new file and record logs in it. So here is, we can see that this is what backup automatically when full. This is one thing. Specify the maximum size. There is something called the behavior when it reaches maximum size. So here you can see that when it reaches a maximum size, you need to tell him when the log reaches a maximum size, you will overwrite the logs, or you will back up the logs, or you will back up the logs and open a new file to create logs in it. These are all options that you can do, and you can control from these options. Okay, so I think from here, let me see here what we say here. If disabled, the logs reach maximum size. Here we can see that, for example, if you enable this option, when a log reaches its maximum size, new events are not written to the log and are lost. So this is when it is enabled. When it is disabled, when it reaches maximum size, new events are overwritten, or new events will overwrite old events. Okay, so this is an option, but I think there is another option. Configure, let me show automatically backup when full. No, this is not. I think there is something called specify the maximum log size. Okay, this is the size. No, there is something here. Let me get to it. So I think application event logging. Yes, here from event logging. No, there is something called event viewer. Nope, there is something here that you can tell him what to do when the size is reached. So here this is when it is reached the maximum size, it will be backed up. But there is an option, I think this is the one, that you can activate two options. When it reaches the maximum size, here you specify the size, and when it reaches the maximum size you will back it up. And then here you can see that when you disable it, okay, it will overwrite. So you can activate two options to back up when the log reaches the maximum size, and then this option will overwrite the logs, okay, the old logs with new events. Let me see from this, or there is something here, and let me show you all this from the event log itself. There is an option if you open the event log from here. Let me show you something. If you open the event log, here we can see that there is something. If you open the logs here, for example the application log, then you open properties, here you can see that there is some options, overwrite events as needed. So this is the maximum size. This will be identified by the group policy, and then these things, when it reaches the maximum size, what you will do, overwrite events as needed, archive log when full, we have seen this group policy, or do not overwrite, clears log manually, so it will leave the file until you delete it manually. All of these options are controlled from the group policy, including the size of the log. Okay, so this will be done for all of the events. This should be included within the group policy. Okay, so you should identify the log size, because this is very critical. Through it you will identify how you will retain, or how much these logs should be retained. Okay, so this is locally, you need to reach a maximum size, and then you need to have a backup job to back up these files. So these are events that can be backupped locally, or it can be backupped from a centralized location, and this is what we are talking about. We need to have a server and application to collect all of the logs, and through this application on the server we will back up the logs from the application on the server, not from here. So anyway, this is something also we need to stress on. So here we are telling him to ensure audit log storage. So we'll collect all of the logs on a centralized location that will contain enough space to hold all of these audit logs, and we should also stress on the time that we need to retain these logs. Okay, so this also should be identified. You need, for example, to retain the logs for 1 year, for 2 years, or whatsoever you need. Okay, so these are the 3 points. The fourth point is standardized time synchronization. So you need to have the time synchronized, or the time to be synchronized between all of the devices. So all of the events are recorded according to the time on the machine that this event happened. So the time should be synchronized between all of the devices in your network, including the domain controller, because if there is any differences in time, this will record inaccurate logs with inaccurate time. So you need to have a standardized time, or to have time synchronization. At least you need to have 2 synchronized time sources. This also is done through a group policy, something called NTP, or network time servers, or NT server or NTP server. Okay, this you should identify a source or a time server source that your domain controller will sync with or sync its time with. So for example, you can tell the domain controller to sync its time with Windows or with Microsoft time servers, or with another external server, or you can identify two resources for time syncing, because the domain controller, he is the NTP server or the time server in the domain. He is responsible for syncing syncing the correct time to all of the devices in the network. So he is the time server, or is the NTP server. So the time on the domain controller should be accurate, because he is the one who is responsible for syncing the right time or the correct time to all of the devices in your network. Okay, so this should be also identified. Okay, there is a group policy to identify external NTP servers. So your domain controller, which is the internal NTP server, will sync its time with external NTP servers or external time servers. Okay, so this should be also done. Collect audit or detailed audit logs. We have said before, we need to identify which events we need to activate the audit option to it. And he's saying configure detailed audit logging for enterprise asset containing sensitive data, includes event source. So you need to activate audit option on important enterprise assets, for example on domain controller, on application servers like the HR application, for example, or the financial application. So you need to activate audit options on important enterprise assets, hardware assets, servers or workstations. So this also, and this audit should include is saying the event source, date, username, the one that have done the process, timestamp when it was done, source address, the IP address of the machine, destination address, okay, the IP of the destination address, and other useful elements that could assist in a forensic investigation. So we have said before that the Department of Defense of the United States have recommended some audit options to be opened on Windows 10 and Windows Server. Please refer to my previous videos to see what these events are. Collect DNS query audit logs. So we all know that the DNS server is one of the ways a hacker can take advantage to hack your network. So if a hacker takes control of a DNS server, then he can join workstations to the domain and log out or take out some workstations from the domain. So the DNS is an important server to protect, okay, and also to monitor its logs for any suspicious activities. So collect DNS query audit logs. Collect DNS query audit logs on enterprise assets where appropriate and supported. So if you have an event log server or system log server, you need to tell him to collect DNS logs. We all know that you can go to the DNS and check the logs. There is the DNS server logs its events in a certain location. So you can tell your system log server or event log server to collect the DNS logs, especially the query of the DNS. So the hacker, if he need to know an IP address, or if a hacker hacked a DNS, the first thing he need to get, or he need to know, for example, an IP address of a machine, so he knows the name, then he can query the DNS after hacking it to query the DNS to get the IP address of the machine. So you need to check the query DNS query logs to see if there is any suspicious activities, and also to collect these logs to a centralized location. Collect URL request audit logs. So these are, I think, related to the internet. If we need to audit the URLs or websites accessed through different devices, I think this will be done through the firewall. Okay, URL request audit logs on enterprise assets. This can be done through the firewall if you have a web filter or web filtering on it, or this will be done through the browser on the machine of the user. You can check the logs or the history of the browsing history from the browser of the user, but this is not an effective way. You can check all the browsing activity for the different devices from the firewall, because he is the gateway and it will filter, or if you have a web filtering option on the firewall. Then collect command line audit logs. So you need also to activate the audit option on the command line utility, the CMD and the PowerShell, because the hacker will use these utilities to hack your environment. So you need to activate audit options on PowerShell and CMD. We have discussed this also before in the Windows 10 and Windows Server recommendations, or securing Windows 10 and Windows Server recommendations by the Department of Defense of the United States. One of them is to activate audit option on command line. Centralize audit logs. Centralize to the extent possible audit logs collection and retention across enterprise assets. So this is tells you to create a server and put on it an application that will be responsible for collecting logs from different devices. Okay, this can be done using an application, and there is a way, or there is something in the event log in Windows. Let me show you all. If you go again to the event log, there is something called forward events. So here from this, if you can see this here, forward events, here you can forward certain events to a centralized location. This is an option you can do to forward events to your to a server, for example, or to forward it to a certain server. I think this will be used with the application that is collecting the logs anyway. So you need to have a software to collect the events, okay, from different, or to collect the event logs from different devices. Let me see. I think we can search the internet for something called system log open source application. So let's see this. Okay, this is some system syslog and event logs analysis. Okay, no, I think this is not, this is the monitoring tool, but this is, let me see here, Solar Watch or Syslog Watcher log collecting software. So these are some, or 10 open source, let me see this, 10 open source log collectors for centralized logging. Let's see this one. So here he is saying that just like security, logging is another key component of web applications, or applications in general, that gets sidelined because of all. Anyway, so two types, levels of logging: professional, developer. No, let's see, we don't need this one. We need the logging is power. So let's see what are the 10 applications used for something like this. Audit trials. Okay, let's see, improving. Okay, let's see, Graylog. Okay, this is one of the leading industry when it comes to grade logging and visualization impacts. It's unique that scans collected logs from science security vulnerabilities and notify you instantly. Graylog is a centralized logging system that has flexibility you need, letting you customize alerts. So you can, through the centralized logging system, tell you to send an email when the hacking, or when a certain event happens related to hacking. This is Graylog, Logstash, Fluent. So you can see all of the different log softwares that are used. So you can see these are the different open source softwares that you can use to collect logs from servers. There is also the third-party utilities that you can use, something like SolarWinds event logs, or event log managed engine. Anyway, there is a lot of things actually you can use to centralize collecting of logs. And actually there is a useful PDF I have used before in my previous videos, something called Windows Event Log Analysis. Here, this is a very good PDF that tells you to concentrate or certain events you need to log. So for example, here is saying that you need to focus on account management events, account login events. He will show you how you can get access to these events, and how you can activate, if there is some audit events, how you can activate the audit option, and where to get the audit logs. So this is a very important PDF that you can use, and I have discussed this event log analysis in one of my labs. Okay, but you can see it. It is called Windows Event Log. I will leave it in my Google Drive. I will leave you or let you leave or let you see this PDF. I encourage you all to see it. So this is also a very important PDF to let you focus on certain Windows events that will help you in analyzing different attacks, or how to analyze hacking events. Hope this video for to you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.